Well, hello. Welcome. This is Andrew Jenkins here. Delighted to be here. I was just checking I was actually on live. It's the first time I've gone live on LinkedIn, so please excuse the slight awkward delay there. So, listen, we're going to talk about communication skills this morning, and today, depending what time of the world you're at. So, question I've got for you is: are you ready to have more engaging conversations with your team and those that you work with? And are you brave enough to risk getting to know your customers a little bit better and go beyond just what they do, because we all do that, right? And moreover, get a sense of who people are that you're working with, and either as a team or as a customer. Well, that's why hopefully you're listening to this live stream right now and later replayed as a podcast. So let me just move on scenes. So I'm Andrew Jenkins. I'm delighted to be with you this morning. I work with leaders. I work with teams. I inspire organisations. I'm kind of known for being the high performance guy, I suppose, in very simple terms. And I've started to introduce a new channel, a live stream channel called Leaders Live, which has been on Facebook up till now. But more recently is now on LinkedIn, because I've got a LinkedIn license and I'm really pleased with that. So I thought, well, I will see what this is like. So here we are trying this out for the very first time. So I'm going to introduce you to the Johari window today. Now, there's lots of different ways of using the Johari window. And I'm going to be using just a simple version of this but looking beyond just the surface level of how the Johari window is used, because quite often it's just used for feedback and things like that. And I'm looking beyond the surface and looking kind of more what it reveals at a deeper level for us as human beings, and about how we can build trusting relationships by enhancing our communication skills, by opening our conversation windows. So that's kind of where I'm heading today. So in terms of the Johari window, look, there's lots of ways of looking at this, as I said, and I'm just going to talk about this really simply. I'm going to talk about the open area, I'm going to talk about the hidden area, the blind spot area, and I've put here the unknown area, or the shared discovery. So that's kind of where we're heading right now. So today I'm going to talk about how we can open up our communication windows, how we can build our relationships easily and simply. That helps us build trust, right? So, Scripture tells us, I'm just going to move on slide. So Scripture tells us, and I love this bit about Scripture, that to play to our strengths and to shine our inner light and bring it forth. Don't hide it under a bushel is the classic scriptural phrase. And also, that our flaws are meant to be there, folks, to help to let other people's light shine into us through our flaws. So where our flaws are one thing, other people's strengths are another, and they can help us with that, right? So that's what the Johari window, that's how I'm going to use the Johari window today. Because, look, folks, we can either have very comfortable, safe, easy, more of the same kind of conversations around beer and football, right? Or we can have more challenging conversations that are slightly more uncomfortable perhaps, but lead to more life-changing conversations with people that get deeper into who we really are. And this happens really if we're willing, folks, if we're willing to open up our communication windows to learn different things about ourselves and for other people as well. And, if we're willing to be vulnerable, if we're willing to be more trusting, if we're willing to be more open with ourselves and with others, then we can have better, deeper relationships, better conversations. That ultimately helps us to win better work, to get more success, and our business succeeds, right? Or we can choose to play it safe and, we don't bother about any of this and we just talk about beer and sport instead. Now, I'd like to think it's the former rather than the latter. So, we can choose to have game-changing conversations, folks. We can choose to have high-performing conversations that stretch people, that challenge people, that move people on. And this is our choice. It's a choice that starts with your intention as a people manager, as a leader, as a CEO, as a senior leader in an organisation, whatever you are, if you're working with people, then this is a choice we all have, And, we're going to look at three ways that we can open up our communication windows today through the lens of the Johari window. I'll explain what the Johari window is in a moment for those of you that are not familiar with that. But just before we begin, folks, I just want to look at just really think about some self-reflecting questions that you don't actually have to answer to me here, but to answer to yourself. This is just to get you thinking, right? So, are you afraid of being too open in a conversation? Do you feel awkward about yourself, talking about yourself to others, for example? Perhaps you might worry about giving someone encouragement, praise-based feedback, or any kind of feedback for that matter. And would you get anxious, people? Would you get anxious about mentioning someone's blind spot to somebody, that you may have in a one-to-one, say, or a friend or a colleague or someone that you trust or like? Would you have those conversations? Or is there a sort of cultural barrier that stops you doing these things? And you know what? Listen, I appreciate all of, these thoughts, particularly on the cultural side, but I invite you, folks, to remain open-minded, during this short session on communication skills, just to kind of see, could I see this differently? Could I view this differently? Okay, so let's move slides. So, what is the Johari window? Well, simply put, the Johari window is nothing technical. It was just invented by a bloke called Joe and a dude called Harry, and that's why it's called Johari window. Yeah, it's a psychological tool. It was created in actually way back in 1955, right? All the best things are old, I suppose. Who knows? But and we've been using it ever since. And on the surface, it's a really simple tool for understanding self-development and other people's development and people skills and feedback skills and things like that. And, in essence, it's a tool that helps with self-awareness. It improves communication. It's about interpersonal relationships, team development, group dynamics. But more deeply, folks, it's about having meaningful conversations. That's what I'm hoping to open up with you today. So I'm going to guide you through three approaches today, three ways, three types of conversations, three ways of having more productive, better conversations, particularly that are useful for groups, for teams, for peers. Basically helps you to build trust, right? So there are several dimensions on the model, as you can see to my right here. I don't need to worry about the labels today. We're not talking about the technical elements of the labels. And there are lots of ways to use Johari window in life, like feedback, for example. But today I'm simply going to use the lens of conversation skills. That's where we're heading. So let's dive right in. Let's go and have a look at it. And I'm going to go through each one of these in turn. I'm going to go through the hidden area, then the blind area, and then the shared discovery or the unknown area. Okay. So first of all, I just want to talk about the principle of windows. And, we all have the ability to look through the world through in a window. So just imagine for a moment that you've got a window that you look through. Okay. And this window is your communications window. And the more we open our window, the better our collaboration style. The more open we become, the more sharing we become. We can share, we can enjoy, we can discover more about yourself, more about ourselves, and more about others. But it's equally true that we can shrink our windows as well, folks, like this slide shows us that. And there are many reasons why people shrink their windows. It could be for current circumstances, handling a current issue. We could have had a difficult trauma in our lives recently. Shyness is another example. Privacy reasons. But a lot of it is about potentially our own insecurity issues, about past hurts, things that have happened to us, our past history, anxiety, all of those things. But, one of the kind of choices that we make is that, if we do end up shrinking our windows, as this note says here, yes, it certainly keeps us safe, but it comes at a cost, folks. It's about sort of, it's harder to get to know others if we're closing our own communication. We've got a small communication window, we can't get to know others, and they can't get to know you, and therefore we miss out on, we don't build rapport, we don't build trust. And essentially, bottom line is, the smaller our window, the more we shrink it, the less high performance we can get. It just leads to low performance, basically. So that's about opening and closing our windows. So I just want you to imagine at the moment that we can open our window. We can do this. Imagine if we can open our windows and we each look through a window, and the choice is, how open do we open our windows? Okay. So let's go through these one at a time. So I'm going to talk about this value point 1 first of all, which is about self-disclosure. It's about back and forth, giving a bit more of you to get more back from others. Okay, so let me just wander through this with you, just canter through this piece here. So, there are aspects about yourself that you are aware of, but others might not know about you because you've not told them, right? So this quadrant, this is known as the kind of hidden area, this quadrant 1 I'm looking at here, the hidden area, where it can be called a facade, it can be called the mask, if you like, the bit that we all have a mask that we wear in front of people. But my challenge is we don't have to have that mask. We can take that mask off if we want to. We can start to communicate more clearly and not necessarily have a facade that we build up. So when we disclose a little bit more about ourselves to other people, I'll give you some examples of that in a moment, this is really good for building rapport. It's a good starting point for a conversation. And it's here that we kind of volunteer stuff about ourselves, folks, in the hope that we begin a mutual exchange where, I give you a bit, you give me a bit back, and we back and forth and we share some information between us, And at a simple level, as a starting point, we might say, well, we might ask, well, if we're meeting someone for the first time, where do you live? What kind of, what's your family? How many children have you got? You're married, all those things. We might, if we know someone a little bit more, we might ask them, what kind of a weekend did you have? What did you do? What's going on in the news might be another thing, to start the conversation going. This is about lubricating the conversation to begin with. But it's not all about sport and beer, folks. That's just the easy stuff. And my challenge is that, going back and forth and disclosing a little bit about ourselves, the more we self-disclose without being inappropriate, the more that we can build common interest. And we can actually go beyond common interest as well. When we open our windows here to allow ourselves to be a little bit more vulnerable, we get vulnerability back. We get even more united power. We invite more authenticity in the conversation. Okay. So, we might be looking for similarities, and that's a great way to build trust, is looking for, what do we have that we share the same with each other. With others, it might be about building trust, getting to know each other a little bit better as well. But it's kind of more than just common interest. It's about getting a sense of who each of us are. And the more we open that window, the better we kind of get at that. So let's just have a look at some. I'd like to just have a bit of open engagement at the moment. I can't see the comments at the moment. They're not coming through at the minute, but I'm sure there are comments, and I'm sorry I'm not seeing those right now. But, I just invite you to think about this. The easiest step to open our windows I've got on this note here is to be known, to share things that matter about you to you and find the common ground. It's about a bit of back and forth, but it's deeper. It builds better rapport and it starts to build the relationship. Okay. So, this is about, are you willing to open up your communication window in this way? Does it make sense to you, folks? Do you find it easy or hard to talk about yourself with your team members, for example, or your colleagues or your customers? All of those things are a challenge to us, right? Even if this might seem difficult or hard, I encourage you, please try it. Be more conscious and intentional about sharing a bit more about yourself with people that you meet, because the more we do it, the more we can, the more we can exchange about ourselves, the better we get to know other people, but the more they get to know us as well. And even if this might seem difficult, just please try it out, give it a go, be intentional about it. And by opening your window in this way, you'll start to find appropriate ways to open other people's communication windows as well. And that fits in your cultural style as well, wherever you are in the world. We can find ways to make this fit. Right? And that's my challenge. And yes, it's slightly challenging, but are you willing to go that level deeper with your team members, with your colleagues, and with your customers? So that's a little bit about self-disclosure. What I'd like to do now is just move on to the other area, which is about the blind spot. Okay. Now, each one of these gets progressively difficult. So this is the next value point, the second value point I want to talk about. Now, this is about any aspect about you that you don't know about yourself, but other people know about it because it's abundantly clear to them. You're just unaware of it right now. That's how this works. Okay, that's why it's called the blind area. It's blind to you, but it's not blind to others. Now, when I talk about the blind spot, quite often people will jump to the conclusion and kind of say, oh, this is about my pitfalls, right? This is the bit I don't want to know about me that other people find a weakness of mine, and I want to cover that up. Well, actually, how do you know it might be about just your pitfalls? It might be about your potentials as well, that you don't realise how good you are and that other people tell you. And rather than dismissing it, allow them to give you that piece of feedback. So it doesn't have to be developmental. It can be praise-based feedback as well. And I really encourage you to give more praise-based feedback because there's not enough of it around in the world, all right? So this is where we get, with feedback from others, we can become much more aware of ourselves and our reactions with other people and what our hot buttons are and, what causes our chimp brain to fire up, the downstairs part of our brain, and what allows us to be at our very best. That could be positive traits and negative traits as well. And that's what other people see in us. Really powerful information if only you're willing to spend moments listening to that. And also, folks, having the courage to tell other people about their blind spots too. So it's having the courage to listen to it and the courage to inform other people about their blind spots, good and bad, right? So feedback given honestly, given genuinely, reduces people's blind spot. And, folks, it's a gift, right? At its deepest level, it's about showing up as a manager, as a person who cares, who's willing to trust other people, willing to trust themselves and willing to trust other people to give them feedback and to back and forth feedback. So it goes way beyond functional relationships, this, folks. This is where we dare a little bit more. Okay. So I just want to sort of stop for a bit of self-reflection at the moment for you guys watching. But, I've put here, this is a braver step in the notes below here. So, it's a braver step. It's being open to give and take feedback, folks, to build self-awareness for you and for others. Yeah. Remember, it's both positive and negative. It doesn't all have to be negative. And in fact, I believe we should do much more praise-based feedback. 5 pieces of praise-based feedback, if you're doing 5 praise-based, 1 negative feedback would be a kind of, a way of thinking about this. And a simple way of looking at this is this formula, which a great friend of mine gave me some time ago, which is WW.EBI, which stands for what works well, what went well, what went wrong type conversation, WWW dot, then it's even better if. So that's a really positive way of saying, okay, what went well, even better if you do this. You'll get even more betterer results. I know that doesn't make grammatical sense. I just like it. Even more betterer results. So there's a kind of framework for you, even better if. So that, I hope that might help you. So, again, I accept, folks, that there might be, for some of you listening to this, there might be some cultural norms that get in the way of this. Understood completely. But again, that shouldn't hold you back, right? You just make it appropriate. And again, despite barriers, please try this out, with your colleagues, one-to-ones, with your team members. When you're having one-to-ones with people, the more you do this, the better results you get, because it builds relationships to a deeper level, folks. So I really encourage you to do that. And I believe that, if you want some examples from my own personal life to get you started, if you like. So, if I'm going to ask you to do blind spots, let me do a few of my own for you, so you get the idea of this. So, I've been given some really phenomenal feedback in my past from colleagues that care about me and love me. And one of them is that one of my dear colleagues said to me one day is, look, Andrew, you really need to believe that people really do like you, and stop trying too hard to get people liking you, because they just like you already. So if you just presuppose that people like you, you don't have to try hard because it's already there. So that means rather than spending your bandwidth on getting people to like you, because your limiting belief is that people don't like you, if you just pretended that people liked you, that means you just take all that energy off the table of people not liking you, and you can devote that to remembering your content or whatever, or delivering your content instead. That was an absolute game changer for me, that single conversation. Secondly, another friend of mine said sometime, well, many years ago to me, did you know that you put yourself down a lot and you use negative language about yourself? Well, actually, I didn't. It was a blind spot, right? So actually, by knowing that, I could change my language and flip it to more positive language. And I hadn't realised that's what I was doing. It's completely oblivious to me. And years ago, in when I was a senior in another job, I remember one of my director bosses saying to me, Andrew, mate, you don't have to browbeat to get your way. You are now at a level where you can just let things unfold instead. You don't have to control everything. So those are 3 pieces of blind spot information that I had that were game changers for me, that really changed my life, moving forward. So, folks, in the blind spot, it is fear that holds us back. But if you have respect for others, if you care about others, if you care about your team, you can drive yourself forward and drive other people forward by thinking about these 2 things. So self-disclosure, giving a little bit more about yourself, a bit more back and forth, giving more of yourself to others, and also helping people with their blind spots, right? So there's the first 2 value points done. Let's now move on to value 3. Now, this is interesting because this one builds really on the other 2. You can't do this until you've got used to doing the first 2 value points well. But I'm often amazed, and these are about adult to adult conversations now. This is about shared discovery, about looking into the unknown about you and others. Now, how does that work? So it takes a while to kind of understand what's happening here, but just imagine that you're talking to a dear friend, and between you, something emerges in the conversation that neither of you realised was going to come up, and was a gift for you, but also a gift for the other person. You both got something out of the conversation. You ever had conversations like that? If you haven't, then I'm really sorry, but those are the best type of conversations you can ever have, where you're sharing deeply with somebody else and you both learn. You both share information. A good friend of mine, he says that whenever we speak, it's like a gift arrives in the room and we unwrap the gift together, and I walk away with it, and my friend walks away with it. It's a gift that we both give each other. It's a beautiful thing. Other examples of this is when perhaps you get an external facilitator to help develop you and your team. It's a powerful, simple example where the facilitator draws more out of you as a team and each other, but also that facilitator learns something too. But equally, you learn something about each other along the way, and that facilitator draws it out. Everybody wins, right? Coaching is another example of that. Adult to adult type coaching, where an ability perhaps that's underestimated in somebody being coached or untried through a lack of opportunity, say, through the coaching, through encouragement, through confidence, that natural ability that natural aptitude starts to get discovered, right? And you both are surprised by it. Oh, I never knew that was in you, and we said we'd have a go at it, but look what's come out. That's about shared discovery, right? Sharing a situation with others that forces you all to learn. So as a team, if something happened that went wrong, badly wrong, by reviewing it and learning from it, everybody learns. It's not a failure, it's more feedback and learning, right? So stuff that goes wrong is a really powerful way of self-discovery, of shared discovery. So bottom line here is that sharing our journey, sharing ourselves with other people, and it's a deeper level of back and forth that actually we end up with a powerful gift that we give one another. We share resources. Okay, powerful gift. So I just wonder whether I've got any more information about that. So these are the first 2 zones. Are build trust, and they enhance self-awareness, and they deepen our connection, and they build high-performing teams. Absolutely. And here, in the self-discovery zone, we enter into something, the unknown territory, as it were. Here we discover new things together without fear, and we ask better questions. So it's not just, this is where we ask better questions of each other, and slowly and surely we draw stuff out of each other. So, working with others gives us the opportunity to face fear, not that something might not be known consciously, but we face a fear together, or we admit a fear and we share in the overcoming of that fear. It helps us, right? So, that's something we can help our colleagues with if we've built trust with them. Becoming aware of our hot buttons perhaps, and having someone help you to overcome those. It's more than the blind spot here. And, thinking about conditioned behaviour and autopilot attitudes and responses from our childhood, by having someone working with us to kind of uncover these as we're going along, because we might not even be aware of them ourselves, is part of the self-discovery piece here. And it's, the thing is here, Jung said this, 100 years ago or so, as human beings, we are so much more. And every decade we discover more potential about ourselves. We discover more about ourselves. We discover more about our relationships with people. So this never ends, folks. So this concept of high performance and collaboration, it goes on and on, keeps on giving, people. I really like that. Now, this whole word collaboration, it's an easy word. We all kind of overuse it in some ways. But it's kind of, another way of looking at this is that we're so used to in the world building contracts with each other. This whole Johari window piece that I'm talking about today is more than contract. It's about partnership. It's about potentiality and possibility that we can have if only we open up our communication windows a little bit further and dare to have that courage. And we get a return. And both people win. Everybody wins. This is where building trust really, really pays off. So finally, folks, that's a bit about opening up our windows. Okay. And, and I really encourage you to think about how open can you open that free area of your window. Now, the question remains, though, is how far do you open your windows? Is it appropriate to just open our windows about everything about ourselves? Clearly not, folks. We're not supposed to do this. We are naturally... Rely on your instincts, folks. There are some things that we just don't talk about to other people. And with some people, we talk more about ourselves, and for other people, we talk less. Be appropriate here. This isn't about oversharing, okay? That doesn't work. So it's not oversharing, folks. That's off the table, right? But it is about opening your windows to an appropriate level. So something that's a bit more like this, really. We open our windows appropriately. Don't overshare. So our blind area, for example, that's there sometimes for a reason, because our unconscious sort of prods us to protect us, right? And if we look at the hidden area, there are some things we just don't share with other people, or we only share with some people that are closer to us, like our family members, etc. And that's appropriate too, folks. And the same for the unknown area. Look, we don't uncover everything all at once. Shared discovery is something that happens over years and decades. We learn more about ourselves. Every day, in every way, we learn more and more about ourselves. So I just wanted to kind of close with that, really, and just say, listen, folks, thank you very much for listening. That's the wrong slide. Thank you very much for listening. I really hope that you've got a lot out of my very first live feed ever. So that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of live stream podcast. Thank you for watching. It'll obviously be posted on LinkedIn as a replay, but you'll also be able to find it on YouTube. I have the Leaders Live channel on YouTube. I also have the same thing on Facebook. So please join me on those channels too, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you very, very much for listening. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.